Good afternoon, all. Thank you for joining us. Hope everyone is doing well on this summer, almost fall-like day, depending on where you are. We are going to give folks a little bit more time just to log in, but I did want to welcome you all. Thank you so much for joining us. And while we wait for folks, I did just want to go over some logistics information. I'm sure by now you are all familiar with how to use Zoom, but before we get started with our offering, this is part one of a two-part Bringing Self-Care into Your Practice through Somatic Awareness with Jennifer Axinn-Weiss. In terms of orienting folks, upon joining the webinar, you have been placed on mute to avoid any background noises that may distract others from listening to the presentation. If you come across any technical issues during today's event, please chat to the CTAC host who will be able to assist you. If you would like to activate the closed captions, you can do so by clicking the toolbar that says live transcript, and then you should be able to see the subtitles. We will have a Q&A portion toward the end, but if you have any questions, any feedback, any comments, please feel free to chat those in at any point in time during today's webinar. At the end of today's presentation, we do have a short feedback survey. We would appreciate you completing it. Your feedback and suggestions do help to inform our future offerings. And then lastly, the recording and slides for this presentation will be posted on our CTAC website, ctacny.org, within the next 2 to 3 business days. So as folks are logging in, I do want to be mindful of time and just get us started. So again, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Diana Arias, and I am with the Community Technical Assistance Center at NYU's McSilver Institute. And again, would like to welcome you to part one of the two-part offering, Bringing Self-Care into Your Practice through Somatic Awareness with Jennifer Axinn-Weiss. We are excited for this offering because although the work you are doing, supporting people in care, children, youth, and families can be very rewarding, it can also be very heavy at times, right? It's one of these fields where the job is to be witness to and help folks heal through, any traumatic events that they might be experiencing or have experienced, adverse childhood experiences, adverse experiences now, whether it's adult life in the family. So we are mindful of that. So we do want to take this moment today in part one and part two to really support you in the work that you're doing. So once again, thank you for joining us. We are very excited again to have with us Jennifer Axinn-Weiss, an expressive arts and dynamic play specialist, educator, and a certified pediatric hypnosis practitioner. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer to get us started. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you, McSilver Institute, and Diana and Cara for inviting me here. And I just feel this is a very powerful time for us all. And I want to thank you each for showing up and invite you into this space. We're going to have this hour, and I'm also sharing kind of an orientation and a space where you might have some support. And I want to invite you as maybe more people are arriving to arrive and see how it is to let go of your morning and know that this is a time that you're giving to yourself for self-care and that there's support for you. I also want to recognize each one of you for the work that you do. And I want to invite the notion of celebrating and really celebrating each one of you and to arrive in this point in your life. And in this moment, I just invite us all to shift from thinking into just arriving. And this is a practice of helping the nervous system settle or just observe where we are. Today, the focus will be to offer you, in a simple way, a body-mind awareness practice. So just notice how it is. And I'm going to also be doing that kind of awareness as I share with you, checking in to see and feeling maybe how I'm supported. I invite you each to notice how you are supported, how you're finding yourself in your seat, the cushion around you. We're exposed to a lot of information, and this is a way to counterbalance and bring some relief for all the information overload that we have, and in particular in your days. And it will be a practice to help you access that place. And by the end of this hour seminar, I hope you might have some tools to bring home with you. And they're very simple. And the beginning is to shift into how it feels and where you feel most settled, even if it's your baby toe. Just finding a place. It's sort of like feeling yourself rooted or grounded. So shifting into somatic awareness is a discovery process. It's a process of inquiry, and there's no right or wrong way. And it's actually has its influence in a lot of mindfulness practice like insight meditation. And the inspiration for me is Somatic Experiencing, based on the work of Peter Levine. I want to share with you that I am not representing the Trauma Healing Institute in any way. I just have so much respect for the work of Peter Levine. Basically, today I'm sharing the experience. I'm not teaching in any way, but I'm giving some background as well about how nervous system regulation can serve, and the awareness practice can help the practitioner's regulation. So just take a few more minutes. And I also invite the connection that we have together in this time, that now we're sitting together here in community. It may be a way to feel into larger support that's here for you. Maybe you might invite in a sense of gratitude. And these additional invitations are a reflection of my practice over many years, and I'll share a little bit more with you. So just shifting. It's simply a practice of noticing. I welcome you to simply feel into what is calming or soothing for you. And you might notice that to shift from thinking to feeling begins to settle. So something's funny. We can't think and feel at the same time. I've tried. But notice what might happen if you feel something. Could be a texture or just your seat on your chair. And maybe thoughts are coming and going, but you might notice that they begin to settle. So just a way to orient, because that's a foundation, is to orient. And I'm going to share as a framework, which is very settling for us to know. Often in the not knowing, we look for that which is settled. So having a personal practice is a way to find sort of an anchor in the storm. And I often use the tree image with roots. So we'll call upon that in a minute, but let me share. So we'll begin with the settling practice. I'll share some benefits that I believe you may experience as you develop a practice. And I want to honor each one of you probably have found methods for your self-care. And I'm inviting you to include some somatic awareness. You may already have a yoga practice or other embodiment practices, but I support you in finding space. And I'm sure you each have so much experience in finding the things that resource you, that connect you with your empowered self. That's also part of this practice. I'll share with you the thread that runs through my practice, and I'll share a little bit about how somatic awareness offers a larger space, a space where we're bigger than what arises. And this is gold. This is like a power move. When we understand that we're bigger than the emotions that come up, and that, or circumstance, or even our stories, we don't get pulled in. So these mindfulness practice offers that space to feel bigger, and other tools I have as well, and I'll share more about that. And I'm going to share somatic experiencing, the impact it has had in the field on mind-body regulation and understanding and working with overwhelming life events. I often refer to traumatic event as overwhelming life events, because sometimes even the word can be supercharged. So we have big events that can happen, but it's how our nervous system comes back to regulation. Then a process, we'll get to have the experience of a grounding, orienting practice that you can have as a resource, because in that process, I'll offer a way that you can have a quick way to access that space using color or symbol or a affirmation statement. So I'd like to share that the benefits of these practices will allow and offer a greater sense of self-trust, because we're living in this time where we're often disconnected from our own inner knower. And by kind of checking in with our body, we'll have a better sense. It's a development practice. So understanding what we feel and think, because we've been overriding our systems as a culture. We've been shown and kept from saying our no. So this is a way of actually having a better connection with what your body is telling you. This awareness practice can increase a sense of stability by even having a go-to return between sessions or in the beginning of the day, just a way of feeling anchored. And I like the visual of a house or a tree. I use the tree image quite a bit. This allows us to just sort of scan for how we are doing and understand if we're overactivated. And then in that awareness, we'll have a way of working with that using our breath. And then it provides a space of relief and support. And even as I speak, I invite you to just return back to that place where you feel that connection or strength, or even going to a resource or moment in time. It also is a way to understand our boundaries, because the somatic experiencing work has really been helpful for me understanding my own boundary of where I begin and where I end, and understand relationships. And this can be very helpful in practice, in sessions, understanding when the client's dysregulation affects me, and understanding that I am here, and what is me and what is not me can be helpful. And then in that process, we can go to our competent self. And I often use parts work and informed by Richard Schwartz's work and internal family systems, but going to the adult, or there are other names for it, the inner knower, but finding that place of competence. And again, as I share, being regulated in the midst of dysregulated clients, and having greater tools for being able to understand and take care of our dysregulation. A place to find renewal, a place to feel your inspiration of your own celebrations, your own moments of victory. And it offers a method for mindfulness throughout the day. I really do love this work so much. So sometimes I need to slow down with my enthusiasm, but I'll share with you some more about my experience. And I invite you each to write in the chat so that I can know how we might use the space between now and the next time in September, so that I can sort of address some of the things. But I hope my share today will cover some of the key points. So the nature of my practice has developed out of moving into the art and the non-analytical mind. I just naturally had that predilection because I have dyslexia. And so what that has meant is that the thinking, my language center, the language center kind of went offline. The Broca center can shut down when we have overwhelming events. And that was my situation. That was one of the components that influenced dyslexia, as in my understanding. So my practice reflects that. I've been in practice since 2003, and I've started out as a painter because my language was visual, and I get to use that in the practice. So I've worked with children in practice using Samplay, which is a Jungian methodology. And I am very involved in using the imagination in service of greater regulation of my clients' victory through situations. So I've also used expressive arts. I've worked in pediatrics, and I loved offering children the space. This is a theme, a thread that runs through, is separating, making spaciousness. So if we ask a child to draw, they can make space from their experience. They are bigger than, and it helps bring regulation more easily. I didn't study somatic experiencing until after that work, but I have developed these, the use of senses in my practice, all the senses, and I'll share more about that in some later slides. And I incorporate, as I shared, parts work. And that's a way of attending to what is arising, again, making spaciousness from that bigger self to what needs care. And often we get stuck in time loops, and our clients will get stuck in time loops, not knowing that something is over. So the lens of somatic work lets us watch, and I'll share more about that too. So engagement with the senses. And then some of my influences have been based on meditative practices, mindfulness practices. And I would like to share that insight meditation is a very beautiful way of just naming. That's another way, just by naming what's coming up. Even if we were to say thinking, or sensation, it allows spaciousness, and it allows us to shift and actually move out of those loops. Again, I felt very lucky to have somatic experiencing training. So I brought that into my practice, and it was a natural fit because somatic experiencing and somatic work involves all the senses. I also use journey dance, which is a method to help us move and use expression, physical expression, to get to move in ways where our body has been calling. And I use laughter as well, and joy. So we can use some of these things with intention. So all these can be really helpful for children with overwhelming life events, because children naturally, and young adults, and those who have had overwhelming events, will naturally like to tell their story in different ways. So we're not just looking for the analytical part, the cognition of the story. We want to let them tell their story in symbolic ways. And this is for you as well. Everything I'm sharing can be perhaps incorporated into your toolkit. And then that will benefit those you work with. So, as a way of understanding the work of the senses, I want to share with you something that you can use right away in your own life for yourself, for your clients. And this is gold, I believe. It's the power of your own voice. And I use it often in creating that container of space, noticing the sounds of one's own voice. And this is inspired also by the work of Stephen Porges, who's the father of polyvagal theory. And he speaks about something called mother ease, or he speaks about the power of prosody, which is the rhythmic sound of language, and how that in and of itself, can you notice right now? I notice that the sound of my own voice is helping me down regulate. It's bringing in calm, and often I use that in my practice. I used to bring in the xylophone with children. For those who didn't want to do art, the babies, the children would just listen to my sound of my xylophone, and they would just calm. And I like to bring conscious awareness because this is a power tool that we have, and it's a biofeedback system. So when we hear ourselves speak, it will have an effect on our own practice, and it can slow down the space. And it just bringing conscious awareness to this. And you may even notice the dysregulation in those you work with in the sound of their voice. So, oops. Um, so I'd like to share that, as I did, that it includes somatic is the body, and it includes, and it can use the resource of all of these different qualities of touch. And so people often think, oh, I need to be feeling. And I'll share something about feeling that we have. Sometimes people have hyper responsiveness to interoception. That's the inner awareness of how our bodies, what is happening, our sense of hunger. Sometimes we are hyper sensitized in those we work with. And so we may be feeling sensations or discomfort in a part of our body. And then there's hypo responsiveness to interoception. And that means that one might not feel into their body. And that's okay too. It's not necessary to feel. It's just an inquiry about how we are in relationship to our felt senses. It doesn't always mean we have to feel. We can see a color, and that can also serve. So I want to share with you this understanding about this inquiry. I also use the imagination. So what we're being shown in our inner eye, with our inner eye, can be a really powerful resource as well. So you can read, in fact, I have more on the resource page about somatic experiencing. So you can get your information straight from the Trauma Healing Institute. And they have really nice supports for more information and training. So somatic experiencing has been so helpful in the field, and the work of Stephen Porges as well. Now, Stephen Porges named the idea of neuroception, which is the nervous system subconscious reactions to what is safe and what is not safe. And Peter Levine then worked with that as part of the landscape of understanding to help unpack. So he has methods to help us unpack. Today, we're just going to start with simple, just awareness practice. But it's good to know and honor the sources of this material. So it's also recognizing the state of regulation or dysregulation. And we have ways of understanding. And in the recognition that we might be in a pattern, a stuck pattern, then there are tools to help us. But the first thing is to find the ground underneath it of where one may be anchored. So that's the frame of this process today. Just giving some background about it. So Dr. Levine noticed animals naturally can come out of a regulation, dysregulation cycle, activation, settling cycle, what it's known as. And they do it naturally because they haven't been conditioned to suppress. They just let their body shake or do what they need to do. And it's important that we're able to see from that lens, because then we won't have judgment if we go into a freeze state. We'll say, this is the body's intelligence, and it's just been maybe in a loop. So this is a frame of understanding that often the nervous system can go through these patterns, and optimally, we want to be able to go into a more regulated, what's called vagal tone, an easier way of letting our system come back after activation, because activation is totally natural. And we live in a time where we're overwhelmed, and our activation cycles have been compromised due to the overwhelm of devices. So we're not always able to come into a regulated state because our devices are there's a barrage of information. Now, for me, I have to make sure there's no pop-ups, because, and that's something in your practice you might want to think about, and maybe you have, but is what your relationship is with your device as you're entering in sessions or in your day, and to sort of think more intentionally about how you're working with your devices, and the technology we have available. And we also will name that for the youth that we're working with. We're in a very unique time, and how we work with technology is really vital for our systems. So this shows a little bit more. If you know, all of this information is available as well. But when we get stuck on, we're in loops. And part of why I love using the imagination is that we can go back and attend and caretake when we're stuck in a loop. And we can just acknowledge this is a loop, and we can go back to that loop and bring more care and let the body complete those impulses. I'm going to share a little fun thing that I like to show you how powerful it is to use your imagination in service of care, but just this is a fun practice. And in guided meditation, or various states, hypnosis is a way of using active imagination for a shift in the body chemistry. So as a practice, just seeing the lemons on the screen. And I have a guided meditation where you can go to a picnic and just close your eyes, if you will, right now, just to try this out. And this is kind of a famous example that people use. But so just noticing how it is to imagine yourself on a beautiful summer day, and you're at a picnic, and then somebody's offering you a glass of cool lemonade, and you're about to hold your mouth up to take a sip. Just notice what's happening in your mouth, and see if you're feeling salivation. Just notice the power of image and suggestion, and even words. So how we use our words can be self-soothing, or the opposite, even being given a word or shown an image. So asking maybe for each one of you to bring more direct awareness into what the images are you see in your day, and see how you might kind of journey with that, discover what that is, and how you might, protect yourself more from overexposure, if that can be helpful. You're already receiving so many histories, and you're already holding so much. Another way I like to help organize is, and of course, again, I want to say these are my inspirations for my practice over years. So this is my unique blend. I want to say that again. But using imagery is part of a framework that's used in somatic work. But in this case, I want to offer you the space to use imagery to your advantage. Even words, so what you say to yourself before session. Do you have any affirmation statements that might help you, all to bring back greater support? So part of this journey is of inquiry into a somatic awareness is to find the language, because often we're not supported for feeling, and there's a natural mixed feeling about landing in the physical body, because we can find places of discomfort. So the ground is a kind of go-to place, but at the same time, something may be uncomfortable. And it's our tendency to avoid what is uncomfortable. And having bigger space allows us to touch the edge of that, or just acknowledge that. So naming, again, is another way to separate out. So this is an example that was used, and I have my own list that I'm working on, but it can give spaciousness. Sometimes I've asked children, on a scale from 1 to 10, how big is the anger? And they'll go, it's this big. And just for them to know that their naming creates spaciousness. And, there are certain methods of tapping technique, emotional freedom technique, where you name something. And then you put a number on in the beginning of the practice, and then you name it again at the end, and the number can come down. So again, the thread of this is to be bigger than. So see, as you're practicing, the sensations you might be experiencing. And again, it's the recognition of what might be arising within that bigger frame of the empowered self. So part of the beauty of somatic experiencing is to be able to recognize the impulse and then bring those impulses into greater completion. So the idea that we are listening to our bodies and understanding the impulses that may want to happen. And it might be just in the naming. And I'll share an example that was brought on this. So some key observations about somatic experiencing I want to share, and I may have covered some of this, is simply to recognize the state of nervous system regulation, unpack overwhelming life events, create spaciousness, and letting ourselves know we're bigger than arises. And today's practice will offer that. And you may even keep the practice going as I'm sharing. Again, I shared discovering and completing body impulses in a way that's manageable. And this, of course, would be work that somebody does over time, perhaps. I'm just sharing some of the benefits of this work, understanding what the body is telling us. Not to relive, but renegotiate. And build the capacity to be with uncomfortable sensations and come out of those looped patterns, the held states within the body. practice empowerment and self-agency, and feeling greater safety from knowing our needs. And today's practice, again, is about knowing what we're experiencing. And when we know what we need and advocate for ourselves, there's a greater connection with the self-trust. Knowing something's over, and that can be used before a session to help yourself put it away. You can bring conscious awareness to that. Practicing shifting from activation to settling. So you can just in the practice come back to settling. Moving from thinking to feeling to being. I probably mentioned that a few times. So today we had this, oops, I'm just moving. So Diana and I were working together a little bit on this, and she gave a beautiful opportunity to share a case of a caretaker, a provider. And the example was Lucia. And I wanted to address my response to how I would see this and give a kind of a direct response and a kind of antidote to understanding. So in this case, Lucia has a full caseload with children. Many of you are probably sharing this experience and working with children who are overwhelmed and traumatized and are dysregulated. And she's been working for so many years. And she's shown up for years. She's been committed to the people, and she's really been there for each of the clients she's worked with. But lately, there's a sense of greater overwhelm, and her resources have been depleted. And she also has her own history of trauma, and she has her own family as well. And she's a single caretaker. So she has her own experience of her own things to attend to. Now, I like to use the idea of a landscape that she's traveling in and a kind of way of helping to organize. So we can work with the sense of how she might, first of all, there might have been something, we can do a little detective work to see if something recently was just too much. But she is actually navigating the care of her own family with the care of the clients. And having a way to understand that and organize that is gold. And I often can use very direct methods to help. It's a visual way of understanding, but how she is in her sessions with clients, that she is bigger than. So maybe even imagining a landscape, a map, a visual map of how she might want to be as she's sitting with her clients in her sessions. Maybe when she enters the room, there might be a sense that she doesn't want to be there. And it's simply honoring this impulse she might have. And maybe caretaking and saying, okay, what wants to be resourced? Do you want to go out and play? And it's actually giving her the imaginal space to be able to go and play. So even in the minutes she's sitting before her session, she might take a minute and just give herself the chance to just feel the freedom that she wants, or recognize maybe she whatever is coming up wants care. So it's understanding the impulse and honoring, and then resourcing with something bigger. So first of all, it's to name it, and also asking her, maybe she needs more outer resources in her life that she's not. Maybe there's an adjustment of her schedule. Like for a while, maybe she needs a weekend away. I mean, there are all these levels of it, but I just am pointing to what the body's asking for as a kind of a doorway that can go directly to give her resource. And maybe she can use her imagination in different ways. Maybe she's taken on too much of what is not hers. Maybe she can imagine putting that down, literally, understanding that she has her own boundary. And that we'll go into the next practice now that I've shared that, and give you a chance to get to have some of those experiences for yourself. And I'll just do a simple guided practice right now. And again, if you have questions, I do notice people are writing in the chat. I'm not looking at them, but I will be able to review them. And depending on our timing, we may have some time to address one or two of those questions. So I'm going to take a breath before I start, but I'm inviting you now to understand. Now, we spoke about interoception, the process of inner viewing, inner understanding, inner scanning. There's proprioception, which is about the outer awareness of where we are in space. So those two, just naming that, those are things that can be developed or understood. And if, as we're speaking, you notice, just maybe jot those notes down for yourself afterwards and just have that as part of your growing edge, your learning edge. Okay, so let me just begin, and I'm slowing my voice down. And again, I'm inviting you in to the space of greater spaciousness, of greater ease. And just by hearing those words, what that means for you. And as I offer in my sessions at times, a sort of embellishment of the foundation practice of simply finding where you feel support. And this is gold. It's gold in finding places in the world where we can access trust. So notice the support in your chair. So that's a contact point. So that's sort of outer inner, but the contact of the support behind you, maybe your lower back. And shifting into the felt sense of what that is. Is it soothing? Is it calming? Does it feel smooth? What does that do in your system to focus on feeling? The ground can be something that's trustworthy. Accessing a place in nature. It's one of my biggest resources in all of our resources. Connecting with the image of a tree, whether you're sitting with your back propped against a tree with roots in the ground and branches up into the sky, or if you're imagining yourself as a tree with roots. So this is sort of embellishing, maybe noticing your own breath. And this again is a kind of biofeedback, noticing, just watching your breath. And of course, there's breath work techniques, but this is just the simple process of being with. It's a different approach. It's not fixing or changing, it's simply observing. So I'll slow some of my thoughts, and thoughts may come and go. And no, sometimes thoughts are a stress response because they're a way to not be present, because the overwhelm might be very big. So letting thoughts come and go, like maybe imagining a snow globe settling. Again, using the power of your imagination. So as we had orienting before, these are terms that are used, and you again can go to the source. But orienting is the idea of knowing that something, well, where we are in time and space. So there are some methods of just being, and knowing something's over is an important way of orienting. That's one of the ways I use the space. Knowing where we are in the room, arriving in the room, seeing what's around us. maybe mentioning to ourselves that we're okay. I think some of the key things I've noticed with those I work with is people simply want to know they're okay, they're safe, they're loved, they're seen, they're heard. Maybe even self-talk. Again, another embellishment, but letting us know we're okay. Where are you okay? The contact point lets us know we're okay. Because our trust system can have gotten disruptive. What we trust. Again, letting our systems, our neuroception know and practice what feels safe. And for many, that's hard to access, and embodiment might not be available. So I often invite people to find other ways of color and self-statements, other things. Scenes where they did feel safe, or people connecting with community or loved ones in our minds, even if they're not with us. So calling upon our team, and you might choose to do this before a session that might be especially challenging. And at some point, maybe understanding what others are bringing in that you might find overwhelming. Anyway, I'm getting too in the mind. I'm bringing myself back. Again, it's about practice about bringing oneself back. And you may have a color that helps you do that. So again, it's bringing oneself back. So I have a beautiful color blue I like to use. And in my day, if I've forgotten everything else, I'll just say I'm grounded, I'm okay. And often for me, I know the impulse might be to walk. I walk a lot because all the things I'm sharing, I'm walking through myself. So finding resource, maybe even imagining a place in nature where you like to be. And noticing all the senses, the smell of the breeze, engagement with the senses is gold. The sounds around you. So in traditional meditation, it's called like object of focus is what I'm calling it, but it's what we're focusing on. So you can focus on sound to help bring ease. There's Qigong practice where you focus on faraway sounds. The sound of your own breath. And in your landscape, if you aren't in one, it could be the sound of the elements like water. So whatever resources you find, maybe the idea of imagining yourself at the beach, immersed or floating in water, will serve you. And maybe noticing your breath when you're in this spaciousness of the beach or a beautiful stream. Whatever works for you, but just noticing how the shift can bring greater ease and spaciousness. And you don't have to go on holiday to do this. So you can have this anytime. And connecting with just your own aliveness, your own gifts. Remembering your own intention for this work of your unique gift that you're bringing to the world. That also can help bring greater inspiration, how you're walking your intention or your gifts. and your joy. The one thing I want to add is the boundary, feeling yourself as your space, and understanding what is you and what is not you. And those are further practices to develop with a SE person, but just how organizing it is. If you're carrying somebody else's stuff, doesn't belong to you. If you're holding a conversation from the morning, imagining where you're holding it and just letting it go, putting it down, but first just noticing it. So there may be other things I didn't address, but I'm just happy to be sharing some of these basic things. And before the next time we meet, I hope to have some kind of handout for ways of assessing your experience, or ways of just organizing your toolkit. So knowing your own biofeedback system, and just in a simple way, just checking in where you are, and any tools you want to bring, color, for example. And I think we have some time to address some questions. And I know I did a little weaving in and out of some ideas behind it, but I think I was able to at least show you and give a little doorway into the landscape that I'm wanting to share. So I have some resources, but before I share those, I would like to invite a few questions that people might have, so I can learn about what was helpful for you and what I can share further in the future.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Yes, so as a reminder for folks, please, we do have a few more minutes. A lot of folks have been sharing what they do, what they have found helpful. So in terms of colors, people are seeing different colors. People are doing numberings. So one of the questions that actually just came in right now, Jennifer, how can I access intentional grounding throughout the day?
Yes, perfect. That's exactly what. So if you track something that you can bring home with you out of that practice, even if it's a 2-minute practice, is if you kind of make a bridge between that experience and a color or a statement or a scene that you like. And so this can be like a go-to, like I always call it like a calling card to that state of empowerment. I also like to invite people into moments of time where they're empowered or victorious, and using the rooted image. But whatever you gravitate to, I invite you to practice and try. This is a discovery practice, to try different methods. Some people use index cards and they just write, I feel grounded and strong. I feel empowered. So using words can be a way, but also through the somatic awareness, just taking a breath, feeling your seat, feeling where there's greater ease in your system. I sometimes like using imagery like I'm a big tree and I'm bigger than everything I'm coming across. And in session, I kind of call upon that if I feel I'm starting to get activated from content that's being shared. I hope that can be helpful, but I'm curious to see what you might find. I want to name some practices that probably are in the chat, but like certain yoga practices, yin yoga, again, wherever you are and whatever you gravitate towards, it's unique. For some people, it might be kickboxing to help complete. I mean, this is a new subject. This isn't necessarily grounding, but I'm curious about your discovery, I guess I should say.
Mhm. So folks are definitely sharing. I do remember earlier on someone shared something about laughter yoga, imagining using sort of the visuals. A couple comments that came on earlier on, and I'll go into some of the most recent ones too. But also some of these different practices, thinking outside the box in terms of just talk therapy, but sand therapy or arts, the visual, the theater, and really offering things that are more inclusive so that we can also keep in mind the people that we're working with who are part of the neurodiverse community, right? It's not just about how to verbally express these things. And I know you had a list of how to express those things, but some of the comments that came through, again, the laughter yoga, right? How to sort of really feel it in across the different senses and not just using words, but how do we really do that for folks? So a couple of questions, let's see, that have been.
One thing about connection is so important for regulation. So maybe throughout the day, there might be a way to make more conscious connection with people instead of devices, because that creates a little dissonance in the system. So, excuse me for jumping back in, but I just wanted to make sure to say conscious awareness of our connection together, because that was disrupted during our time of being isolated, and that still may be having effects. So
So in the last couple of minutes, let's see if we can squeeze in two more questions. What do you think of the use of colored noise? For example, white noise, pink noise, green noise, and where would you use it most effectively with your clients?
yeah, I'd gravitate towards natural sounds, but I know the sound of water, the elements can be powerful. I think it may be a way of finding out about one another or yourself by asking the client or how that makes them feel. That's where the discovery comes in. Does the sound, this white, I know there are different, like green noise, I know the different, I remember hearing some of the different ones. I know we use white noise outside of our offices to kind of buffer sounds, but I would kind of again invite you to explore what you're noticing. It's this practice is really the core of my practice is to help each person know themselves, know what works for them, and bring back the empowerment to your knowing, like what you're gonna discover with it. So
And let's see if we can squeeze one more. What are some common challenges people face when trying to implement somatic awareness practices, and how can they be overcome?
yeah, so it's important that like right now we're just going into the ground. I'm not doing more than that. But when somebody's in a process, a lot of the work is about helping to attend to what is dysregulated. And it's a matter of doing that in a very manageable way, what's called titrated, a manageable way, so that doesn't have to be re-experienced. It's like sort of building capacity. So in service of building capacity, I would tend to develop the grounding practice as the bigger container, because I think, working with the dysregulation it needs to have some skill. There needs to be skill, and to have that in co-regulation can be helpful. So
Great.
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so again, to folks, I know we didn't get through all the comments or the questions, but we will be collecting them via the chat box. And Jennifer, maybe I can share those with you, and we can maybe attend to those at the beginning. I do want to be mindful of time. So Jennifer, if you can just move forward to the next slide. And I will say that also our coordinator has put in the chat box a link to our survey. So please, click on that. It will also open when you log out. Again, we do use that information to help inform our future offerings. But Jennifer, I do see that you have some resources here. I don't know if you wanted to share anything around these resources.
Yeah, I'd like to say there are more comprehensive lists. I mentioned emotional freedom technique, but I'm sure you have come across a lot of resources on your own. I just named some things that have been support for me in understanding some of the work. Some of the things I mentioned, I'd rather you go right to the source for. and take it from there. And I'll look at your comments for between now and the next.
Great. So as a reminder, the slides and the recording will be on our website in the next 2 to 3 business days. So you should be able to download the slides and also just go into these hyperlinks. And on the next slide, just as a reminder to folks, when you registered for this part 1, you also registered for part 2. So that is September the 20th from 12 to 1. So we will see you folks here. And as we just moved on to the very last slide, again, I just do want to say thank you to you, Jennifer. We definitely look forward to meeting again next month, and to you, the audience members, for joining us. Please feel free to visit our website, ctechny.org, to review any past trainings, tools, any announcements. And again, as a reminder for the survey, just so that we can have that information moving forward. Any questions or concerns, please contact us at ctech.info@nyu.edu. On behalf of CTech and Jennifer, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.